everybody. Welcome to another edition of American Rambler. I'm your host, Colin Woodward. Thank you for listening to the podcast. On today's show, I have author J.P. Miller, Janice Miller. She is a writer based in the Atlanta area. She's written a number of books for young readers. Her books focus on African American history. There are a couple series that she has been writing for. There's one called Leaders Like Us, in which she has talked about people like Sister Rosetta Tharpe, the musician who is from Arkansas originally, and the astronaut Leland Melvin, and Shirley Chisholm, who ran for president a while back, long before people knew who Hillary Clinton was. She has a book coming out August 1st, according to Amazon. It is about Juneteenth, the holiday honoring African American history, the end of slavery in Texas. And that is a long story in and of itself, Juneteenth, but that was observed last month. Luckily, I got that day off. I know it has been a contentious issue, that holiday, but some places observe it that are a little bit more progressive. So I thankfully got that day off, although I was on vacation at the time, in a interesting part of the country where these issues that JP talks about are very palpable. I was in the low country of South Carolina, where there are still a lot of plantation houses, and they had just opened the International African American History Museum in Charleston while I was there. So she writes about these topics that are still very relevant today. She has been a very productive writer. She's going to talk about her process, how she got interested in doing this. She's originally from Asheville, North Carolina, where I've been a couple times. She's based in Atlanta now. She went to school in Tennessee, and she did not start out as a writer or a journalist. She was in the military for quite some time. She's retired now, so she can do this full time. She had reached out to me, or I should say her agent, I think, reached out to me, and we decided to do this. So we have a nice conversation about her path to writing and the writing process. She's a very disciplined writer. The writing profession generally, it is complicated, I guess, as it has always been, and very difficult for people who want to do it, but she has some good advice. She's had some luck, obviously. She's very grateful for, and she's just been doing it, kind of 9 to 5 every day, a full-time job. And the results are pretty obvious. She's been publishing a lot. So she has a book coming out soon on Juneteenth. She's working on another one about HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities. That will be out, I'm not sure when, but you can get the book on Juneteenth. It is going for $7.99 paperback on Amazon. So check that out, and also check out the many titles in the Leaders Like Us series. Yeah, fun to talk to someone who has been successful as a writer. I think, like a lot of stories, it's a lot of hard work and a little bit of luck, but she seems very happy doing what she's doing, and she's been very successful. So it was nice to talk to JP. There's a lot of other things I could talk about that have been happening since the last podcast, but I've been doing a couple this summer, and I think I'm done. Hopefully there will be one coming out this month and maybe early next month as soon as I can get to them. So if you enjoy the podcast, that's great. I'm trying to get things edited and out there. It is time consuming. If you do want to help the podcast, I think probably the best way is to tell people about it, but also follow me on the social medias, and also leave a positive review on Spotify. That would be very helpful. I would love to get a 5-star review, but I can live with a 4-star review. But not a lot of people have rated it. I know my audience is small, but it does help to get the word out. If there are a lot of ratings, people will find it because of the algorithm or whatever witchcraft they do to get things promoted. The ratings really help. And also, if you have read Country Boy, or if you've read Marching Masters, my other book, if you want to leave a good review on Amazon, I would appreciate that as well. It's not like the old days of Amazon where you had to leave a decent sized review. You can just rate it 4 or 5 stars. Again, 5 would be great. 4 is good. So those ratings will help people know about the book. doesn't do a lot for me financially. It's just to, get some more ratings and bring people to the book. So that would be great. I'm not going to ask for money on Patreon. It's just not going to happen, and that is fine. I have one guy who's been supporting me on Patreon, and I appreciate it, Dr. Steele. But you don't even have to support this podcast financially. Not to get dark, but there have been times where I've just kind of thought about not doing it anymore, but I do like it, and I do want to help people as much as I can. I know it's not going to really ever make any money, but I like to stay engaged and like to put this content out there. So some reviews would be helpful if you don't want to support it financially, which is fine. Doesn't really cost anything. It's just, well, it does cost a little bit with the Libsyn subscriptions, but it's not going to cost any more moving forward. It's just a time commitment. So if you could help out in a small way, I would really appreciate it. I'm on Instagram. Just reach out to me. I'm on Instagram at Colin E. Woodward, and the website is colinewoodward.com. Sorry for all that self-promotion, but it would be good to get a little response from everybody if you want this podcast to keep going. Hope your summer is going okay. It seems like it's going fast. We've been getting a lot of rain. It just rained here in Richmond. If it's rainy and you're staying indoors, you can go through my back catalog at American Rambler, which I'm going through, editing out some old episodes that I don't really need on there anymore. But I hope you'll enjoy this, my talk with J.P. Miller. Thanks for talking with me. What have you been up to?
Oh my God. Today has been one of those days, just the past couple of weekends actually. So I've just been running this morning. What did I look, now I'm forgetting what I did, but I know the university that I attended is having an alumni conference in town. So I was going between that and a doctor's appointment, and I can't even remember what else I did first thing. Oh, Toastmasters first thing this morning. So it's just been, it's been busy.
What's Toastmasters?
It's a public speaking organization that helps you learn how to speak, improve your speaking, public speaking. So it's like international. It's huge.
Okay. Are you in Tennessee right now?
No, I'm in Georgia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I went to Tennessee State University, and so they're having the Southeastern regional alumni conference here.
Okay. Is that Atlanta?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Where are you?
I'm up in Richmond.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, thanks for talking with me. How many podcasts have you done?
This is probably like a handful. This may be like the 7th or 8th one that I've done.
Okay.
I'm not a pro yet.
Yeah. Well, I'm not either. I've done a lot more as an interviewer than an interviewee. I'm sure, as you know, it's with writing these days, it's like you really got to promote yourself, or
absolutely,
that's the expectation. But it seems like you've been really busy with publishing. When did you kind of get started? I mean, well, first of all, let's maybe just talk about like what you've been doing as an author and kind of when you started doing that.
Yeah, I've been writing since like the mid 90s is when I first got that little, the little itch to do it. But, and I was telling someone today, I met with a gentleman to help me do a script, rewrite a script, movie script, that is. And so
cool.
I was telling him, I was like, man, if, I look back and I read one of my first stories that I wrote, and it's almost laughable. I thought I was doing something, but over the years of going to workshops and training and sitting under the guidance of certain people and, improving the writing, I can see now it's like, oh my God, and I thought that was ready to go out,
Yeah. What is the script about, if I may ask?
I was in, there's an anthology entitled The X Chronicles. It was published 2021 I think it was by Brown Girls Books, which is owned by Victoria Christopher Murray and Rashonda Tate Billingsley. And so they had a contest of stories that pertain to an ex. And so, of course, everybody, the majority of people, it was, relationship type exes. And so the one that I did was about friendships and how a friendship ended with the group of ladies actually. And so I am going to Black Creative Con in August. And so I'm going to be able to pitch that to some movie producers. And so I met with this gentleman today that's going to help me get that in, the proper typesetting and all of that kind of stuff. I did it in Word. And like I told him, I went to YouTube U to even, get it as good as I did. He felt like I did a really good job, and he actually felt like it should be a feature. So I'm going to go back and do some work on it, and he's going to help me with it. And hopefully when I pitch it, I'll pitch it as a short movie, but, let them know that it has the potential of being a feature movie and that we're working on that. So, so this is my first time dipping into that,
Yeah.
It is a result of the short story that was in the X Chronicles. And that was X Chronicles was really the project that got me focused on what it was that I really wanted to do. I started off writing, I called it chapter books, but as I learned more about the industry, it was really like a middle grade and probably a low middle grade because it was like 25 to 30,000 words. So that could actually be a high level chapter book, for a child instead of a middle grade. And I'll just have to see how we grade it out. It depends on, if you're a writer, that sometimes word counts and genres change. So right now I'm looking at it as a middle grade. And so those are the first books that I wrote, and I self-published those. And my experience with self-publishing wasn't the best in the world. I got attached to what I would call a predatory publisher. And so after that, I ended up having to buy my rights back to my stories from them. And so after that, I just promised myself that I was going to do traditional. And so I had to decide, what it was that I was going to write. And so, like I said, X Chronicles helped me to decide that I really wanted to do shorter stories. I wasn't really interested in doing the longer middle grade or novel type stories. And so I put the majority of my focus on picture books and early chapter books as a result of that. So I got an agent about a year ago, or maybe, about a year and a half ago. And so, that's a whole battle, and we could probably talk about that.
Yeah, well, let's talk. How did you manage that? Were you approached, or did you just approach people cold?
I approached people cold,
Okay.
and so I had my little set of agents that I thought were my ideal agents. When you shop them and see what they're looking for and what they produced, and so I had the probably about 10 or 15 of them that I felt like, okay, I could get, and I did have them tiered, and so I thought, okay, if I could get either of these, then that'd be great. And I would send them out and I'd get the rejections. I started getting the champagne rejections, so I did feel a little bit better. But I would get the rejections, and of course, you can't resubmit the same thing. So I'd write a new story, and then I'd submit that again, and then they reject that. So basically what that did was help me have a lot of stories on the shelf for when I did get an agent. And so I was talking to, I consider Gwendolyn Hooks to be basically like my mentor, but what she did do for me was help me to get into the work for hire industry. And so I was talking to her one day, and she said, well, Janice, she says, why don't you look for an agent that is just getting into the business? And so they're trying to build up their clients and so forth. So I said, okay. So I got a Writer's Digest. And so I started thumbing through them and seeing what these people were looking for. And so, long story short, my agent is a new agent. She's probably been agenting maybe like 2 years or so, maybe, right close to around the time that she and I partnered. But man, I'm talking about a go-getter. She goes for the jugular for her clients, and I just love her and the way that she operates as an agent. She keeps us in the loop. She usually has like a quarterly Zoom to kind of see everybody's face and let us meet all the other clients. And I don't know if you've heard of the Highlights Foundation. They used to do the Highlights magazine for
Oh
kids years
yeah,
ago.
yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. So they have this big compound in Pennsylvania, and they have cabins and meeting place, and so they have a lot of workshops there, and so you can also do non-workshops. And so Sarah has done a couple of, this will be the second year that she's met with her clients there, and then she has a one-on-one, and you get to see everybody in person. So I just love everything about it. She keeps us in the loop when she has our stuff out on submission. She has a spreadsheet that we can check anytime we want to see if anybody's responded, because she does it in real time. If she gets an email today of someone that says that they don't like it or they want more or they want, she puts it in real time. If it's something that they want, then she'll contact us, so I'm just pleased with her, so far so good. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's that is really responsive. I mean, I don't have an agent. I've made an attempt to get one, but just with academic publishing and freelance, what I do have experience with, I mean, it's it's staggering how bad the communication can be. I mean,
Yeah.
months go by and you don't hear anything,
Right.
and then you
Yeah.
you send an email, nothing. You send an,
Yeah.
it's like just very frustrating. And
Yeah.
freelance is even worse because they have no obligation to respond to anybody. So
Exactly.
I'll send out an email, don't hear anything, just like, okay, I guess I guess I
Yeah.
didn't like the idea. But yeah, it sounds like it's working out pretty well. And I mean, you sent me your portfolio, and so I mean, you have a lot of titles that are listed under the African American history for young readers.
Mhm.
Did you wrote all these books?
I did. And so the first series was the Black Stories Matter series, and again it was Gwendolyn Hooks that gave me a call. She knew that I was trying to get into the industry, and so she says, "Hey, I have a lot on my plate. Can I recommend you to this editor?" And so I said, "Sure." So she sent my name, and this was Hachette UK. And she sent my name to the editor, and the editor contacted me, and I sent her a sample writing, and she was like, "Okay, yeah, this is what we want for Black Stories Matter." And so I did that first one to come out, and then the same thing happened with the Leaders Like Us. She contacted me again, Gwendolyn did, and she was like, "Hey, are you interested in this?" And so I said, "Sure." And so she sent it to the editor, and the editor and I talked, and all this kind of stuff. And so the rest is history. I've done, I want to say it's like 20, it may be 20 titles in the Leaders Like Us with little known African American people and the things that they were known for. And then I did Careers in the U.S. Military also for Rourke Education. And that was also freelance or work for hire. I just recently, I think it comes out. Oh, okay. I did one for Capstone for Juneteenth, and it's part of a holiday series, I think it's called. It comes out in August. And then there's a Travel To series that Carson DeLuca has also done. So they have one Travel To civil rights places, landmarks, I think, and then they have one Travel To museums. And so I had been talking to them about doing something on HBCUs, which is historically Black colleges and universities. And so they came back around, and we talked about that. And so I wrote the book for Travel To HBCUs, and that comes out in the fall of 2023, I think it is.
Okay. So how many books is it all together at this point?
Oh my God. It may be like 25,
Okay.
25, 28, something right there, I believe.
And
I,
you got it started doing this when?
I want to say this may have been 2020. Black Stories Matter may have been released in 2020 or 2021.
Okay.
So so I say 2.5, 3 years is when they've all been written and published.
Wow, that's impressive. So maybe walk me through a little bit like how you kind of arrived at this, because I'm guessing at this point this is a full-time job for you.
Yeah, I retired.
Okay.
I was active duty Air Force initially, and then I got out of the Air Force and I worked for Department of the Air Force as a civilian over youth programs, kind of like the Boys and Girls Club or in fact, I think eventually, right as I was leaving, they merged with the Boys and Girls Club. So I was director of youth programs. Then I moved to Georgia and I worked for the Forest Service until I retired in 2015. And so once I retired, this is like my full time. I get up, eat, breathe, drink children's literature,
Yeah.
and and just trying to think of stories in ways I don't have to think too long, because there's so many stories in the African American diaspora that hasn't been told. So it's like always I can find a story anywhere, and so I get up every morning and I usually do some aspect of writing all day long, whether it is the research or whether I am actually writing or revising, or I'm in a critique group. So I may be going over someone else's story. And like I said, today, some of the things that I was running around doing was preparing for this Travel to HBCU book to come out, trying to get a partnership going with that. So it's like Monday through Friday from probably about 7 in the morning till about 5:30, about 5 or 5:30. I'm in my office and I'm doing something towards my writing.
Well, I'm guessing being in the military probably trained you to get up early, I'm guessing. Or are you a morning
Probably,
person?
probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably. In fact, one of the questions today with Toastmasters, they have a portion of the program that they call table topics, and so they give you whoever the table topic master is, give a question, and you have to answer it without, hopefully without stuttering or using fillers, And so the question was asked if I was a night owl or early morning person. I said, well, I'm a little bit of both, because if I'm really onto a project or I'm really into, especially the research, I love the research. And if I'm really really into it, I may stay up till like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And then when I go to bed, it's like, I don't know what it is, but I just automatically wake up between 6:30 and 7. If I sleep till 8 o'clock, I have slept too long.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what time I go to bed, I'll still get up between 6:30 and 7:30 in the morning. So
Yeah, some people, it's kind of a moot point because they just don't really sleep. It's like they're up late and then up early, and they can
right,
rely on 5 or 6 hours or whatever.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but I don't know. I mean, the schedule that you have, I mean, that's pretty impressive. And I mean, to produce this many books, yeah, it sounds like you have to block out big chunks of time. Now, I know you're retired, but
Mhm.
I mean, some people it doesn't matter. Like they just have a weird, chaotic schedule. It's hard for them to get time. But when you started doing this, I mean, did you think it would be taking up this much time?
I did not. In fact, this is like I say this is my God given gift. I think this is my God given purpose, because I had no background in writing. I didn't take journalism, any of that type stuff,
Yeah.
or work in a newspaper. I did recreation all my life. My degree was in recreation administration. And so, it has nothing to do with writing, but I've always been like, even in, I want to say it was maybe like what we would call junior high now. I call this my Mr. Livingston story. He was my teacher it was high school for us, but it was like ninth grade, I think it was. And Mr. Livingston's class was like broken in half. So we would go to lunch. We would go to his class, then go to lunch, and then come back. Well, I would be late for Mr. Livingston's class. And so he would have me write while I was late for, coming back from lunch. And so I wasn't the one to write. I was late, 100 times, whatever. I would make up these creative stories, and he would be so interested. And he was probably, yeah, because he would call me Miss Miller, like college professors do. He's like, "Oh, Miss Miller, I just love this story." And so I'm like, "Oh, you do? Okay, well, I'm gonna be late tomorrow so I can write part two." Yeah, so that was probably the extent of my writing in the beginning. So everything that I do now is I had to definitely work and go to workshops and all kind of things, hang around other creative minds.
Was this in Asheville?
Yes.
What was it like growing up there? Did you like it, or were you kind of eager to get out? What was it like for you?
No, I liked Asheville. In fact, I love Asheville.
It's a cool town. I've been there a couple times. I've liked it, but didn't spend a lot of time.
And it was probably a lot different living there versus visiting. But I really, we had a very tight-knit community. Of course, I grew up in the 60s and 70s there. And of course, there were things that were different. I remember, some of the things that Blacks couldn't go in the movie theater. We had to sit at the top, in the back. And so I remember some of those things, growing up. I remember when the school that I went to, which was an all African-American school, when integration came in and they closed the schools and we had to go out to the white schools. I was a part of all of that. So those parts, of course, looking back on it, it was like, wow, I never really looked at it as being, well, at the time, never thought of it that it would be a part of history. It just was. And just now looking back at those times, and understanding them and like, wow, I was a part of that. I think the main thing, we had really tight-knit communities then. And it was like, one person looked out for their kids and the other kids, and we didn't really have to want for anything.
Was it a military family at all?
No. Okay. My grandfather was the only one. He was in World War II, I think it was, and he was the only one in my family that was military. My dad was kind of betwixt and between the career conflict, so he didn't have to go. So I'm like the only military person, and that's a whole different story. But I think the other thing about growing up in Asheville in terms of why I do what I do now is the fact that, and probably wasn't just Asheville, but there were no books in the libraries that the characters looked like me, or the communities or the settings was like my community. And so between that and working for a Department of Defense with youth programs and being in the early onset of the Black History celebration, when it was a day and then it went to a week, and, of course now it's a month, it was like the same people were being talked about all the time, as time went on. Now, when I was growing up, you probably would hear about Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman. That may have been it, just a little bit. So I just wanted to add some more to that. And especially, this campaign now, Make America Great Again, and all this kind of stuff. America's been great the whole time. And it's pretty much come at the expense of African Americans. And so I want those stories to be told.
Yeah. So, I mean, what kind of things were you reading as a kid? I mean, whatever you could kind of get your hands on, or was it tough? Or
I like the adventure type. So again, there weren't any stories like, what we're seeing now, like Amari and the Knight brothers or anything. There was nothing like that, when I was growing up. So it was like Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer and, Little Women. Those are the type stories that I read. And of course, you know how Black people were depicted in those books, but that was all. I was an adventurer. I like to, even now, I'm basically 64 in August, but I still like to bike. I like to hike. I like to run. I like to swim, so I'm that adventure person. So those are the stories that drew me. I love the mischievousness of, Tom Sawyer and the things that he would get into. And so I try to take that type of, because I felt like that story came to life for me. And so that's what I try to do in my writing, is bring the story to life so that the child will put themselves into the story.
Well, I grew up in the 80s, and it was cool at that point because they did have certain adventure stories for kids, like the Choose Your Own Adventures, and there were kind of offshoots of that. But it was also a good time for movies. You had Star Wars, you had Indiana Jones, and so it's kind of nice to have all those things. But it seems like a lot of with these like series, kind of like what you're doing, people in history, whether it's African American or women or whatever underrepresented group, that all seems to be fairly recent, right? I mean, last 20 years or so. I don't know.
Yeah, and I will even up you on that, because really when there was some, and there were a few authors that had gotten a couple of stories in, and so they're kind of like the go-to authors for children's books and biographies and Black history and stuff. But when I saw the industry really open up and finally hear what a lot of people in the underrepresented communities were saying, is really after George Floyd was murdered.
Okay.
And so you saw them actually say, okay, you know what? We got to listen to these people. You're absolutely right. We do not have any underrepresented communities represented in, being agents or editors or whatever. And so they started looking for that. And they started looking for more people bringing more diverse stories. So what you're seeing right now, I think, is a result of that. And you'll see probably in the next couple of years, even more books coming out, because, it started, what was that? That was in 2022, 2021. I can't remember. Anyway, it was probably about 2 years ago when that happened. And so, of course, in the industry, even if you get, if a publisher purchases your story at this time, it may not come out for another year and a half, and sometimes 2 years down the road. So you're going to see even more. And I like that, they're getting away from a lot of the basically like slave narratives, because for a while, that was all they wanted to be, published. And we've sat under, I guess, a shadow, the popular telling basically what stories could be told. Because even if you had a person in an underrepresented community writing a story, by the time the editor and the publishing house got a hold of it, it wouldn't be as authentic as that person really wrote it originally. So I think now they're even allowing for that. It's like, it's our voice. Let us tell our story.
Okay, so you kind of mean like someone, if they have a voice as an author, they're not trying to make kind of a generic product like you'd see in an encyclopedia entry or something. It's kind of, they want to maintain the individual voices of each author. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying I'm trying to think.
The story itself, trying to make it
the
specific,
story itself. So if I'm saying that if I have this story that I put out there that says that this particular character, had to walk around to the back and order their food, and then it was spit in or whatever, that was my experience, or that was my character's experience. That is some of the things that happen during that time frame. Well, an editor may get there and go, well, no, we're not going to put that in there. Okay. And so they'll take it out or soften it or whatever. And so authors are saying, these are the experiences of my people. And so we don't need anybody. We don't need a filter. And it's almost like this critical race theory that's going on now, where they don't want certain things to be in the schools. It's like one example I think was they wanted to change it to make it sound like that slaves or Africans had a choice when they were brought here, like they were immigrants like everyone else. It was like, no, that's not how it happened. So you've probably heard some of those things. And it's like, no, we have to tell it like it is. You went over, you tricked the people, you stole the people, and even the tribes, like, oh, well, some of the tribes are the ones that, turn the people in. Well, yeah, because you gave them an incentive. So it's like these stories have to be told, and there's no way sugarcoating.
Well, it's interesting because if that's what's happening with your literature, those kinds of things are happening. I think that's a good thing personally, but there's also been this sort of against that, like you said, with critical race theory antagonists, or just other people. Like I'm sure you probably heard the story about Roald Dahl and his books that were being kind of toned down just because of some, not racial necessarily, but just kind of harsh language was getting edited out or whatever. So there is a lot of that out there. Sometimes it's coming from the left and sometimes it's coming from the right. It's weird to see, but I think you're right. You want to keep these stories authentic because there's only so much you could sugarcoat the past. I mean, not even necessarily sugarcoating, but slavery was a horrendous thing, and so you have to give some level of detail in how it happened, why they got here, what the motivations were. How do you sort of decide who you're going to write about? I mean, who was the first person that you took on when you started doing this type of writing?
Ooh,
because you have there's a lot of people on your list, and I wasn't exactly sure which ones came out, but was there one person initially, or you're like, I got to write about this person, or did you kind of just wait and do some research and then decide, like, what's the process behind that of who you choose?
It's like whatever wherever I go, it's like I won't say that I'm absolutely looking for a story, but I don't stay blind. So, for example, I've got a story now that I am just dying to write about, but it happened when I went to run in a relay, the Selma to Montgomery relay, when I found the story. So I could be watching television or radio and see or hear something, and I'll immediately write it in my phone and then come back and do some research on it, on either the event or the person or what have you. And so I like I said, I love doing research. I am a lifetime member of, I mean, I'll keep paying into it. I hadn't paid a lifetime membership, but I love newspaper.com. Absolutely love it, because I can go back and get these people, for the most part, like in the throw of whatever it is that they were known for. Because you do a little Google, and most of the time you get the same information over and over again, maybe a different source. But when I go back to newspaper.com, I find, like, on this particular day, this person did da 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 da. And I'm like, what? And I can get original quotes that even, Google won't show. When I started with Hachette for Black Stories Matter, they had a few people, and I think that series, there's 4 books in the series. There's sports, there's activism, there's science, and I can't remember the other one. And they may have like 10 large stories, which was about 600 words, and then they have about 8 to 10 mini stories about other people. And so they gave me some people, and then I suggested to them others. And the same thing with Leaders Like Us. Initially, Leaders Like Us, they came to me, the first one, they came to me with 3, and then I gave them 3. And as time has gone on, they've just allowed me to write about who I'd like to, because I get the stories that are little known. They still come in with some, like, for example, Jackie Orms was one of the ones that Carson DeLosa introduced to me. And I had not heard of Jackie Orms, but I probably played with her paper dolls when I was young. because I used to play with paper dolls. And so that was intriguing because I hadn't heard about her. So I really enjoyed getting in the research. I went to them with Henry Louis Gates Jr., so I love him because I'm kind of nosy like that. I did my family's, genealogy and tried to, go back as far as I can. So it just goes back between my interests or if I see or hear someone that's very interesting. And then the stories that I've written with hopes to get picked up traditionally is the same way. And I usually keep a tighter lip on those because you know how it is. You say something and somebody else catch wind and say they already established or whatever. And next thing you know, you see this book coming out about this person. Not to say that it can't be more than 2 books about, the person. But, it's like, okay, it's probably a harder pitch and a harder sell at that point.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say even a lot of historians wouldn't know the people that you've written about. I mean, they're kind of deep cuts, so to speak. I mean,
Mhm.
you're not writing about, like you said, when you're growing up, there was Frederick Douglass, there was Martin Luther King, like people that were talked about, but these are, more obscure people.
Mhm.
But that probably makes the research really fun because you probably feel like you're not the first one to do it, but you're kind of taking
Right.
on a topic that hasn't had a lot of press.
Right. And just, getting this information out, and the number of adults that, that read the picture books. And I was like, oh, wow, I didn't know that. In fact, I can't remember if it was Jared or who it was, but one of the people on Jeopardy said that basically when they read a lot of children's picture books to help them to because it's quick, it's fast, it's a short read, and they get a plethora of information that it's like, okay, I can store that rather than reading a long book that a biography or whatever of someone. They have it all right there in a picture book.
Yeah, I mean, you written about Sister Rosetta Tharpe, and I haven't read a lot on her, but when I was doing research on Johnny Cash, turned out she was an influence on him and a lot of other
Mm-hmm.
people of country and rock and roll. And the great thing about YouTube now, you can go on YouTube and you find old footage and everything. Like,
Right.
wow, she's a rock and roll guitarist.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Cool.
not gotten a whole lot of credit. And she, giving credit where credit is due, she was one that Carson DeLosa gave me to write about too. So they gave me her name and I did the research and did the story on her.
Well, and I lived in Arkansas for a while, so there was an Arkansas connection there too. I know she didn't live
Oh,
there
okay. Yeah.
very long, but she was from there originally.
Yeah.
Did you say you had an agent before you started writing, or was it kind of after you started writing?
No, it was like way after.
Okay.
Yeah, I just got my agent in the past year and a half.
Okay.
And her name is Sarah Rivers, and she's with Spielberg Literary Agency. And it took a long time.
Is that really any relation to Steven Spielberg?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. And I can't remember.
You don't hear that last name a lot, but
I know, right?
okay.
I can't remember the person's that the founder of it. I can't remember her first name, but I don't think.
So, I mean, I don't necessarily want to get into your finances or anything, but like, if you were, I mean, could you have made a living doing what you're doing now at some point, or is it somewhere between kind of like a hobby and a, like a full-time job? I mean, I know you're spending a lot of time, but like, how is it?
Yeah.
How is the financial reward with
Work for hire, you have to definitely weigh your pros and cons and see what it is that you want to get from that industry because they don't pay a lot.
Okay.
And what they do is they pay you one time. You don't get any royalties from it or anything. Now, what I will say is that I am grateful that that I went that route because I have the Leaders Like Us series that sold over 40,000 copies. Black Stories Matter internationally sold over 20,000, and so I've had those things to be able to give to a potential agent and say, hey, look, this is what I did with my work for hire. And so my name is out there. I've gotten reviews from the school library journal, book list. And so those are some of the top places that you really want to get reviews from. So I can add all of that into my pitch to my agent. So it depends on what a person is looking for, and then there may come a time when you will want more, and you may not necessarily get it, and that's probably definitely in the educational market. Now, there's also people. In fact, I came close to getting one of these. It was with one of the big five, and it was a work for hire, and they were giving a flat rate that, hey, we'll pay you this amount to write the books, but they also had the caveat of having a royalties come to you for it. But in talking to the educational market, they'll say that, hey, they're a little different. They don't have that kind of money. They can't do this. They can't do that. So it may come a time when you have to make a decision of what you're going to do and where you want to go with your writing.
Yeah.
So so it all depends. In terms of making a living for it, if you get with the right publishers in freelance and work for hire, you could probably make a good living with it.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't know a lot of writers necessarily. I mean, I know a lot of academics who write to get tenure, or they wrote just, to get published and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I've met a few freelancers over the years, but freelance, it's all over the place. I mean, you could write something for $100 and it could
Mm-hmm.
take a week, or you could write something you wrote in a day and get $500. It's like
Mm-hmm.
really crazy. And I don't understand how certain people can make it without a spouse or partner working full time and getting
Mm-hmm.
benefits. Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just,
And it's probably once they get established, and I think even getting an agent, because I've turned to my agent and I've said, hey, if you get any work for hire stuff, let me know. And so she's gonna, the flag is up, and she's gonna start looking out for those things. And so I think the all of the books that I wrote in Leaders Like Us and Black Stories Matter, I didn't have an agent that negotiated that for me. And so this was when I was just getting into it. I didn't know, what was a good, what was ideal payment or whatever, because I hadn't gotten paid at all up to that point. So they offered me X number of dollars, and I was like, hey, okay, and then when I realized, it's like, what? I did that for,
yeah.
You live and learn, and as long as you don't, and I said to my critique partners a few months ago, I said, hey, you guys, it's time for us to go over this hill. We've beat ourselves to death with learning the craft. We know the craft. We write good stories, and it's two other people that in my critique group that have gotten stories sold. They haven't published yet. I think one is going to be coming up pretty soon. And so that'll be the start of us with our books actually being there. They've already sold. But I told him, I said, now it's time for us to learn the business, because I don't want to get taken advantage of anymore.
Well, it sounds like that happened. You said you were doing self-publishing and it was kind of a nightmare. No, I've never done that. So I don't know, so there was some kind of service where you would pay them to publish the book. How did that kind of work? And how did that?
Well, with this one, they're different now. I've heard and seen that they're different now. So the self-publisher and I'm putting up the little quote unquote fingers, but the self-publisher that I went with, I didn't have to pay anything. And so, being naive and not knowing, I was like, oh, okay. And, but they had a very bad reputation of taking anything. And so, and of course, self-publishing, I think that's part of the black eye of self-publishing, because so many people self-publish, they don't get it edited properly or whatever. And so there's this stereotype that, with self-publishing, self-publishing and let anybody publish. And so that's what this company had. And even, somebody said that, they wrote a manuscript that just had the ABCs written repeatedly, and this company accepted it and all this kind of stuff. So I don't know how true that was, but I do know that my experience was that they accepted my story. One of the main things, and it was, I think it was like a 7-year contract, I want to say. And me not knowing any better, hey, I went ahead and signed it on the first contract. And crazy me, I went against everything that was inside of me, and I signed again for another story. And so this time they had hardbacks, and so they were going to charge I want to say they were going to charge like $28 for this hardback, and I was like, $28? I said, a New York Times bestseller's hardcover is not even $28. So how am I going to get people to pay $28 for this book? Yeah. And so we went back and forth, and they got uglier with each email. And so finally I just said, you know what? I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to try to sell it. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to wait it out. And then the contract, waiting out 7 years is pretty hard to do. And so I had moved on and started improving my writing and all this kind of stuff. So finally, they said, well, you know what? If you want the rights to the story back, you can buy it. And it was for X number of dollars. I said, okay, fine, I'll buy it back. And that's what I did to get the rights to that story back. And so, like I said, it's like ever since then, it's like traditional. That was the way to go until, Gwendolyn told me about work for hire. And I did work for hire. And I'm not saying that I won't do it anymore, but it will definitely be something that my agent will negotiate for me.
Okay. And that story that you had to buy back after the 7-year period, were you able to resell that again?
That's one of the ones that I'm working on. I'm working on, it was a series. And so I'm working on the first book, doing some revisions and bringing it up to date. And so I'm ready to send that in to my agent to see what she thinks of it. I've already written a proposal, and so we'll see what she says. And if she, feels like that we can, go with it, because a lot of times, from what I've heard, that they don't want to do a story that was self-published, even though it was like early 2000, and I don't think that too many people even remember or purchased it. So this would definitely, the way I am now with an agent, and if one of the larger houses got it, I feel like it would really be a good story and a good series.
Yeah.
Hopefully. And I'm from a spiritual standpoint, I'm like, okay, God, I know you did not have me write all of those words for nothing,
Yeah. No, I mean, when you put a lot of time or, potentially, years or something into a project, you don't want to have it go nowhere.
Exactly.
And I think I've never looked into this myself, but I think maybe Amazon you can actually self-publish through Amazon. And
yeah, I've heard of people doing that now.
I think you're just kind of paying for the printing costs, really. There's no editorial oversight, I don't think. It's just sort of,
see, that's the whole thing. Because when I self-published, I couldn't even get in a bookstore to do a book signing.
Oh yeah,
because they didn't do self-publishing because they had such a poor reputation, of not being written well, the illustrations and all that. So, I mean, how many times have, as a writer, how many times have you had people to say, hey, I've got a good story to tell, write my book, or I'm going to write a book. It's like, you have about as much experience as I had when I first started, but yet, they want to write a book. So everybody has a story to tell, but it's like, what makes your story stand out? And a lot of these people feel like in their minds that their story stands out, but when they put it on paper and go in, it's really family and friends that's buying it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it can be pretty brutal when you give it to someone who knows what they're doing as an editor or as an agent, and you think it's great, and you send it off. Yeah. And you get some really honest feedback, hopefully. I mean, a lot of times you get nothing, but
Right.
No, it can be very humbling. I mean, even as an experienced writer, rejection is just a part of it.
Hmm.
Things you think are going to happen, then they fall apart later on.
Right.
I mean, I've never had any interactions really with the entertainment industry, but like I hear all these horror stories about, stuff that's optioned and then 5 years go by and it never gets made or
Mm,
whatever. Um,
mm.
Honestly, at this point, I'm just like, as long as you get paid, like, don't worry about if
Yeah.
it's turned into a movie. Just get paid, and
Get
then
paid. It's on them.
it's out of your hands, right? Um, but yeah, I mean, just the weirdest things happen. I mean, with my most recent book, I've just been getting like strange phone calls and stuff like that from people who they say they want to promote my book or whatever, but I
Mm,
think they're just like these scams and they somehow
yeah.
get your phone number.
Right.
But it at first, like sometimes you get excited because they're like, we want to turn this into a movie. You're like, oh wow. But then,
Hmm.
you got to do your research and go
Exactly.
back to your publisher, go back to your agent, say, this legit? Because I didn't know. But
Right.
there's these people out there.
That's
Yeah.
part of what happened to me the first time. It's like, so hey, I can do illustrations, and unfortunately, even in my church, you feel like people in the church is not gonna, and it was like, oh my God, this is the work you're doing. This It was kind of shoddy, but you would get it all, and I
Mhm.
guess they were on their grind just like we were or I was, and you just you paid this money, but you didn't get the work that you thought you were going to get for it.
So when did you kind of have your breakthrough? I mean, obviously there's a point you started writing. Like, when did you? At what point did you kind of say, "I can do this"? I know you said you retired from the forestry in 2015.
Hmm.
So when did you kind of say, "All right, I can do this as a writer"? When did that happen?
I want to say it was around that 2021 time frame,
Okay.
um, with the X Chronicles. So that was when, I was still sending out packages and, doing the query letters and going to workshops and sending stuff to agents and all this kind of stuff, and kept getting the rejections, kept getting the rejections. And it had come to a point that I had really gotten tired. And I was like, you know what, Lord, I'm just going to have to find something else to do. Okay, what am I going to do now? Because so much of my time had been devoted to that, getting up early and working. And I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do to fill all this time in? I didn't want to go back to work. I don't want to go back to work. And so
Yeah.
I sent the story in the X Chronicles for X Chronicles, and it was selected. And so that gave me a lot of, a big boost. It gave me a big boost to say, okay, I made it in this anthology. And then there became that lull again, because I was like, okay, and doing the picture books, and again sending them out to different agents, sending them to publishers that that would take. I was going to say walk-ins, but that's not the term. Unsolicited. That
Okay.
would take unsolicited submissions, and so I was submitting to those people, and and getting the rejections, and then of course when Sarah accepted me off of this one story, I was like, okay, so I'm feeling optimistic again, but it's kind of like a roller coaster, you know.
Yeah. Well, 2020, 2021. I mean, a lot of people, that was a rough time with COVID and
Yeah.
lockdowns and stuff. I think there were a lot of people who were sort of reevaluating their lives or their
Right.
careers. And since you've been in the military for a while, I mean, you had this freedom, it sounds like, to
Hmm.
pursue this. But some people, I think, in lockdown, they were either really productive or they were like the least productive they've ever been. It was like
Hmm. Hmm.
hard for some people to get motivated, but then other people are like, "Hey, I'm never going to have this much time to just
Right.
do
Yeah.
this."
And that's what I did the first
Yeah,
time. They had a government shutdown. And so during that government shutdown, it was a budget issue that they couldn't agree on. I think it was when President Obama was in office. That was the first time that it came to the point that they actually shut down the government.
yeah,
And so it was like 30 days, I was at home, and that's when I decided to start revising this one story that I was speaking of earlier. And I was like, you know what? I could do this. and,
Yeah.
and so it was at that point that I was like, soon as I get to the age limit of retirement, I'm out of here.
Yeah, good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I dreamt of that, that having sort of this unlimited time at some point, but I've kind of realized until that happens, if it does happen, you just got to put in the time. I mean,
Exactly.
even if it's just an hour on the weekend or something.
Yeah, get 30 minutes of writing a day, that's
Yeah.
that's moving you.
Are you one of those people? Do you have to write every day or do you want to write every day?
Yeah, like I said, well, it's something. I'm doing something
Yeah.
uh, every day towards writing, whether it's actually writing or whether it's revisions or whether it's research or looking at someone else's story. I'm doing something towards writing every day, Monday through Friday.
Yeah, that's good. It's good to have that discipline because if you lose it, it can be hard to get it back.
Exactly.
I went through graduate school and it was kind of, like writing every day or revising every day. Again, it's not been easy the last few years. I'm trying to kind of get back into that now, even though I have a full-time job. In some ways,
Mm-hmm.
it structured me a bit more. So I'm like, well, I can't write right now because of my work. So I have to
Mm-hmm.
get that time later.
Mm-hmm.
So in some ways, it's been kind of helpful because I don't know. I can get exhausted if I've written something. If I finish a book, I might need like a few months or a year to recharge. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard to do it every day. But one thing it sounds like with the series for you, it's like, I mean, there's a fairly quick turnaround. Would you say, like, kind of how long is the process from
Yeah,
beginning?
work for hire,
Yeah,
work for hire is like fast. So
yeah,
if they contact you today and say, hey, we would like for you to write XYZ book and give you all the specs for it, and you say yes, probably by next week they would want the outline, and probably by the let's see, no, this is the middle of the month. Probably by the first or the middle of next month you're going to have that title to them,
yeah,
that manuscript. And so then they'll go over the first pass and the second pass really quick and get it back to you. And next thing you know, it's coming out. Because I want to say, let's see, this is July, this is June. I want to say I finished the travel to HBCUs. It may have been around March, February, March, and so they're looking at it coming out in the fall. It's a
yeah,
quick turnaround with work for hire in the educational market. Now, the story that I sold traditionally, I want to say it sold in March. Yeah, I think it was March of 22, and so they've projected that it will be released in April of 2024.
okay,
So you see the difference there. It's like
yeah.
traditional. They may buy it now and it may not come out until 2025.
Well, academic publishing can be ridiculous. I mean, you could sign a contract and then, I mean, the book isn't out for at least 2 years
Mhm.
after. So it'd be a lot of waiting. Have there been any projects in particular that you kind of got stuck on, or have at this point, are you just kind of you've got your process down, you can kind of work through? Were there any one title or anything that kind of gave you fits as a writer?
None of the ones that I've written, because like you said, they're like quick, short, and to the point.
Yeah,
Uh, the longer stories that you have to like, the series that I'm working on that I had self-published earlier, those you have to, it's so much backstory, and you have to do character development, and make sure your plot and your character arc and the arc of the story and all. It's just so much more. You have to do all of that also with a picture book, but with 600 words it's a lot easier to do versus 30,000 plus. you
yeah,
know and there, I probably gotten stuck or gotten bored with those more so than I have with the picture books. And I just think, God, 30,000, I could have written X number of books, but I'm still on this one. But I don't give up. I'll go ahead and
Yeah.
finish it. I like to go swimming, and so I call a swimming pool my think tank. So I'll have my music on and just kind of swim my laps and think.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll come out with an answer or clarity or something to move forward, move the story forward. But and then my critique group helps a lot. If we say we're stuck on a particular thing, or read my story, and when you read it, I want you to look at blah 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 and blah 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 blah, and so they'll come back with honest, brutal feedback as well, and get you going from there. But
Sure.
yeah,
Well, I think it's good to kind of go back and forth between big and small projects.
hmm
I mean, maybe sometimes it's just for your own ego or something, but it's like if you can do whatever, I mean, that's a really good feeling as a writer, because I think some people, they have a hard time going from small things to big things or vice versa. I mean,
hmm
sometimes people can write 50,000 words, but then if you ask them to like condense it down, it's 500 words. So I just, that's a
yeah,
tough
have a
transition.
hard time because they feel like every word is important.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we've sort of talked about it, but what advice would you give to an aspiring writer or someone that's maybe been doing it a while that kind of wants to make a transition to, getting paid for your work, getting consistent work? Kind of what would you tell them?
The first thing I say is, like, never give up. Is that if that's your dream or that's what you really, really, really want to do, don't give up. You're going to get a lot of no's, and I always say you're one no closer to your yes. So every time, one of my critique partners, I got a rejection letter, I got a no. Well, you're just one no closer to your yes. And so you have to, be optimistic about it. And don't be afraid. I think a lot of new and aspiring authors are afraid to, like, even share their work. Don't be afraid to share your work, of course, with people you can trust, but find a good critique group that's going to be honest with you, and that, there are multi levels of writers within the group, because that's the way that you grow. Make sure that you take as many workshops. Don't let Uncle Billy Bob read your story and say it was great, and that's what you go off of. There's even editors that they will edit your book. You pay them, but they're professionals at doing that, and you have them editor your story to make sure that it is what you would like for, or your best version of that story that's going out. It's not that people in self-publishing can't make the New York Times bestseller list, or get awards or get recognition. They can, but you have to definitely put in above and beyond work, and just have tough skin.
Well, it sounds like, I mean, you're proof that there's still a viable market for writing. I mean, people probably been saying this as long as there's been writing, but it's like you hear horror stories about, well, no one can sell things anymore, or it's impossible, or I mean, I've kind of thought this myself. Like, it can feel like just such an uphill battle to get anything published or get paid for it. But I mean, you've certainly navigated the system. So I mean, what are kind of your thoughts? Do you think writing is a viable market, and it's probably as good as it has been? It's hard to compare between now and back in the day, but like, it seems like you've kind of figured it out. So I mean, you think we should be optimistic
Oh
about
yeah. Oh yeah.
pursuing writing? Yeah.
Yeah. And then, narrow it down, because, I see some people that, one day they're writing, in this genre, and the next day they're writing in another genre. And it's like, total opposites or whatever. But, narrow your focus down, whether it's, you want to do a picture book, or whether you want to do biographies, or, Christian fiction, or whatever it is that you want to do. Narrow that down to that genre and study it, and see what would make you different. I mean, from day one, that was the one thing that that I did. And one of the reasons that I really loved doing the work in the educational market with Carson DeLosa in particular, because I started off and before I even knew that I was branding myself, I branded myself, and I said that I want my stories, and still do. I want my stories to augment the classroom experience. And so if they are not learning about this particular person or this particular event in their classroom, they read this book and take it. Hey, Miss So-and-so, I just read this story about da 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 da. And then I would have questions and puzzles and things pertaining to the story. So it was like a little workbook afterwards. And so they would have to answer, some questions and may have a word search or whatever. So when Carson DeLosa said, hey, we want to have, like a study guide in the back, I was like, bingo, that's me. I love it,
Yeah.
And so, brand yourself. Not only did I want not only do I want my stories to augment the students' classroom experience, but I know that I wanted to write about little and well-known people and events in African American history. And I also want to focus on family, because a lot of people feel like African American families are structured differently, meaning that they feel like there's a lot of single mothers out there trying to raise the kids and dad has ran off or whatever. So I want to focus on family. So you can see, hey, our families are just like everybody else's family. And also, as a Christian, I want to focus on spirituality. And so all of my, especially my own manuscripts that I send out, there's a certain level of spirituality. There's, family that's discussed. And so those are the things that, if someone or editor or publishing house says, hey, can you give me a story about blah, 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 blah? I'm like, yeah, that's right down my alley, because you have the four things that I stand for as a writer.
Are you worried about AI at all? Just computers writing books or stories?
I'm not. I'm not. And like I was saying, Sarah really comes back and talked to us about what's being discussed in the industry, and so we're supposed to have one a Zoom pretty soon, and that was one of the things that she said that we're going to talk about is AI. And I know from talking to in my critique group and other authors and stuff, I know that there's a way that editors have something. I don't know if it's a program or what have you, but they can tell whether a story has been written by AI or not. So that's going to be interesting to hear. In fact, one of my Toastmasters, fellow Toastmasters, is doing a speech on that in the next couple of days, next couple of weeks, and so I'm looking forward to hearing all about AI. But it's a new thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should be a little worried whenever there's like a new technology incursion into the creative side of things. But I mean, you look back and people said movies were going to be killed by television, and then movies were going to be killed by the VCR, and then movies were going to be killed by digital download. It's just like, I think these genuine art forms have a way of surviving. I mean, there'll probably be some oddly good AI, and then there will be some real garbage, but that's true with humans. So I think you just got to keep doing the work and,
Because I think eventually, whether it ends up being a fad or it ends up being permanent in the literary community, I think that, that there will probably be, authors that'll be good at that, or people that'll be good at, getting, an AI story out there. But like you said, I don't think it'll take away from the rest of it. It's not going to be that, everything is AI and there'll be no need for people and their creative minds again,
Yeah. No, let's hope so. Do you have anything coming out like in the near future that you want to promote or plug right now?
I have, there's a Juneteenth that is through Capstone that will be coming out in August of this year. And then the HBCU travel to HBCUs will be released this fall, I believe. And then my Ghost of Freedom is the title of the one for traditional publishing, and it's supposed to be released in April of 2024. Now, I don't know, that could change. That definitely could change. I don't think the other ones in the work for hire arena will change. So I think both of those will be coming out in the fall. And then, of course, the HBCU one, like I said, that's kind of like my heart. I went to a HBCU, and I just feel like those schools, I can walk into a guidance counsel's office here, and I'll see everything about Georgia Tech, Georgia State, UGA, but there's nothing about HBCUs in the state of Georgia, not to mention other, elsewhere. So I don't know what the counselors are telling them, but I know when a student walks in, they don't see a pennant up on the wall, with HBCU. And so I just feel like this is a viable option. It's gained some traction. Again, I think, it's kind of the aftermath of this whole George Floyd, and now everybody, it's like, okay, let me check out these schools, and let me check out this. A lot of them are seeing an influx of people coming back, students coming back. But yeah, I would like for that one to really, I'd like for it to be a really good, to do really well. I'll say, I like it to do really well.
Well, and the one on Juneteenth, they didn't want to release it on Juneteenth.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened to that. Because
maybe you have to wait until next year, and maybe they wanted to get it like out in time for like schools to use it in the fall.
That's what I thought after because at first I was like, okay, this is Juneteenth, is it coming out? And then I Googled it, because a lot of times they don't. A lot of the editors and publishing houses don't get back in touch with you like you would want them to let you know what's going on. So I was like, well, shoot, let me Google it and see. And so I saw that they're doing pre-orders and that it will be out in August. So I said, well, it makes sense. That's when school starts back. And so maybe your media specialists are, already looking to, get new books on the shelves or whatever when the kids come in. So that's what I'm going to attribute it to.
Okay, so it's on Amazon now. You can pre-order.
Yeah, I saw it on Amazon, and I want to say Goodreads. I saw it.
Okay.
I saw it in Goodreads, so it's definitely got to be on Amazon. And I didn't pay attention to where else you can order it, but I would maybe Target or something too.
Yeah, Amazon is, it's totally taken over the industry, and
yes,
as you say, it's like that's your first communication is like you go to Amazon, like, oh, they're pre-orders, or oh, it's coming out. This no one tells you anything.
Yeah,
you just got to you got to find out on your own.
Yes.
All right. Well, good luck with all that, and good luck with the script. It was good talking with you. What with the script? Like, are you just briefly again? Like, are you waiting to hear back from someone, or are you still working on it?
I have finished this. I have finished the script, and so I talked with a person. He's a producer. He's a film producer, and he also does workshops on writing movie scripts and things of that nature. And so we had a long meeting today about moving forward, and so he's definitely interested in helping me get it to ready for the pitch. And he feels like right now I have it as I think, what did he call it? Not a short flick, but anyway, a short movie. He says, but he feels like it could be a feature movie. And he gave me, some things that I could do to strengthen it. And then I did take, I don't know if have you heard of this class, and it's a book also called Save the Cat.
I don't know that one. No.
Okay, Save the Cat helps with writing movies and TV shows and things of that nature. So they have a thing called a beat sheet, and there's like 17 things that that you need to make sure that happens in your story. And so I said, well, I haven't done a beat sheet on this because that was, I wrote this way before that. And so he said, yeah, you could benefit from doing a beat sheet. So I'm going to do a beat sheet on it. And then that'll be something else that I'll be able to tell whoever's in the room, the
Okay.
producers that are in the room, that, hey, I've done a beat sheet, and this is the way we feel that it could be as a short, and this is the way we feel it could be as a long, and
Yeah. Well, I mean, other than being in LA, Atlanta's probably the best place to be to get a movie sold now. I mean,
yeah,
kind of the Hollywood of the South.
yeah. And he gave me he gave me some really good information about what uh, is being looked for right now. So I'm like, oh, maybe maybe God trying to tell me something, like they say on The Color Purple. Maybe I need to do some of these manuscripts that I have and
Yeah,
write them into a script. So
there you go. Well, it's
yeah,
funny. It's like I see so many movies now. They'll say they're in Northern Virginia or whatever. I'm like, this doesn't look like Virginia. I bet this is Atlanta. I'm like, sure enough.
yeah. Yeah,
They're
and
shot in
it's so
Atlanta.
crazy because I don't know when I was growing up or just going to the movie. I won't even say when I was growing up. You say, if they say, "Oh, this story is happening in St. Louis," or "This story is happening in the woods in Ireland," I'm thinking that's where they are.
Right.
But I've seen them since I've been in Atlanta. They'll be like, "Oh, Jennifer Aniston is going to be at the such and such today." Really? Yeah, because she's working on this movie and there's a part of it since she's in town. They're going to film it here. And I'm like, oh, but wasn't that supposed to be in?
Yeah.
So they just find something that looks similar, I guess.
Yeah, they really mess with your head because I can just kind of tell, especially because it's so hot in Georgia. I'm like, everyone looks a little too hot and sweaty for this to be wherever it's supposed to be.
Right,
And now,
right.
and now apparently they're filming a lot in Eastern Europe, like
Hmm.
I think Bulgaria or someplace. It's
Huh.
apparently cheaper. I don't know how the logistics work, how it's cheaper to fly everyone to Bulgaria,
Yeah,
shoot a Netflix show rather than just do it in the U.S. But I guess
yeah,
it's taxes and all that stuff. But
probably. Probably
anyway,
way above our pay grade to understand.
but that's exciting. So I hope that works out for you.
Well, I will keep you posted.
Okay, and
Yeah.
yeah, I'm glad we could talk and do this, and I'll probably need a couple weeks to edit it down, but
Okay.
I'll be in touch.
Okay. Thanks so much, Colin.
All right, that was my talk with JP Miller. I hope you enjoyed that. You can check out her many books in the Leaders Like Us series, as well as the Black Lives Matter series. She has a new book coming out on Juneteenth. Should be available August 1st, going for $7.99 on paperback on Amazon. I'm not sure if you can pre-order yet, but check it out on Amazon because they're usually the first ones to know. Believe me, they know before the authors do what the heck is going on. So check all those out, especially if you have a young reader that loves history. This has been American Rambler. I'm your host, Colin Woodward. I am the author of Marching Masters, Slavery, Race, and the Confederate Army During the Civil War, available through UVA Press, and I'm also the author of Country Boy, The Roots of Johnny Cash, which is available from University of Arkansas Press. You can get both of those online on Amazon, wherever else you see books. If you want a signed copy, you can contact me at my website, colinewoodward.com, or you can contact me on Instagram. Be happy to send you a new signed copy. I'll let you know the price, and sometimes it fluctuates depending on what the paperback is going for, but it'll certainly be a good deal. I appreciate that. Another thunderstorm has moved in. We're getting some more rain. Seems like it's been raining just about every day for the last few weeks or so, but not especially hot. But when it's really humid, it's pretty gross and miserable here. So it has not been comfortable, and not especially great weather summer so far. But getting some reading done. I did a podcast on the album Tommy, the Who's classic album, rock opera Tommy. That'll be coming up soon. And just today, did a podcast with Bob Mann, who's been on the show before, about his book on Huey Long. So, got some shows coming up on some interesting topics, and I hope you will be tuning into those, downloading those. And again, if you want to help me out, leave a positive review either on Spotify or the other podcasting sites or on Amazon. if you've read my books. I would really appreciate that. All right. Red Sox are playing okay. They've got a little winning streak going, but they've been up and down all year. So I don't know what to expect. We're heading into the All-Star break. Hopefully they'll just squeeze into the playoffs with a wild card or whatever. I hope you're doing okay. I will be talking with you soon. Take care. Bye.